Fallout Equestria, Child of the Stars, Chapter 8, Part 5. Come out, you fuckers! I just wanna gotcha! A crazed raider cackled from around the corner. I leaned down, only to dive back as fragmentation pellets struck the wall. Great. Now, one of them had a gun, a shotgun, and like all raider weapons, it was not in its best condition, but that didn't negate the fact that it was still a threat. My horn flared and I blind fired a pair of plasma bolts into our attacker's direction. It wasn't hard to imagine the blood-stained white corridor was turned into a shooting gallery as both the automatic plasma weapons blasted it with bolts of green energy. A hiss and a sharp scream later, and I checked it was clear by glimpsing the reflection of my rifle's casing. Fuck you. Fuck all you ponies and your stupid faith, the raider growled, writhing in a spreading pool of his own gore. His right shoulder and forehoof had both melted, and the scent of the seared flesh filled the corridor. Approaching him, I levitated my gun to his head. What I was about to do was both mercy and prevented my timid companion from having to stomach that gruesome scene for any longer. They'll get you. They'll get every pony. Then they'll all work for them. I silenced his crude laughter with a plasma burst to the skull.
Consider yourself lucky then.
I spat scornfully at his head, melding into viscous red soup.
What did he mean?
Cherry's quiet voice murmured behind me, and I paused.
Okay, I was expecting her to collapse from shock or trauma, not be curious. Damn it, Brain, she's not a foal. Besides, are you so different?
Well, maybe if I hadn't been a lab rat less than an hour ago, then yeah, I would be. But right now, I could not give a fuck.
I don't know, just some typical crazy shit,
I told her as I casually began trotting onwards. I was no stranger to freaky religions in the wasteland. I mean, they tended to arise when your original deities were no better than every pony else. Sub-level 3, another bloodied wall proclaimed as we reached the top of the next stairwell. I knew this level where we'd find the elevator, assuming that it led to the surface. Looking down the bloody and bullet-riddled corridor, I could see just how many ponies had been gunned down before the turrets had finally been destroyed, and was strangely irritated by the fact that I was glad those turrets hadn't been shooting at us. I had traversed through the corpse-strewn corridor, with Cherry following close behind me. Her eyes were averted from the mutilated mess, as she seemed to force her mind to focus on, something else, because she wasn't displaying any symptoms of trauma. I can only expect that the crazy raiders' ramblings were among them, and as I rounded another corner, I noticed a set of double doors ahead, shattered into splinters. I assumed that the rocket-wielding buck that we'd dispatched downstairs was probably responsible for the destruction done unto the doors.
Or some pony with an equally explosive weapon,
my mind told me, reminding me that if one pony could be armed with heavy explosive weaponry, then there was likely more scum carrying that kind of firepower out there. On the roof above the remains of the doors were turrets, the likes of which were nothing more than mangled scrap metal. The bloodied white walls either side of us were broken by long sheets of tinted glass, windows into what appeared to be more labs. It was still far beyond me to even consider what they may have been doing here before the bombs fell, not to mention how those experiments now involved me. I just tried not to think about my churning insides too much. I still had a pony to save, even if I was as good as dead once whatever that robotic bastard had done to me came into fruition. As for our adversaries, they seem to have dwindled into non-existence. I mean, despite their poor equipment and foolhardy tenacity, I knew raiders couldn't be behind this. Some pony was pulling the strings on this scavenger hunt, and I'd really like to have a word with such a pony. Looking ahead, I could see the hull split left and right. Sub-level 3 was once again displayed upon the wall opposite, as well as a label claiming that the main service elevator was to the left. With a dull hum, the doors to a lab on our left opened, and my ears perked as I watched another set of doors on the far end of the lab also open up as I peered through the glass. As unnerving as it was, I had a good idea who was opening the doors for us. I stopped at the edge of the lab's doorway and peered into the lab. I had overheard them say that they were low on raiders, as both the corpses littering the levels below us and those littering the hallway on the level we were currently on were evidence of their mounting losses. If I didn't know any better, I'd say they'd completely run out. I guess that means that all that is left is the cunning ponies. My gaze swept across the lab before settling onto the open doors on the opposite side of the laboratory.
This way,
I told Cherry, gesturing towards the open door. There was a reason for why the Overseer was opening the doors the way that she was.
Wait, Why was I following it again?
My mind spun for a moment before reflecting upon my thought process and decision-making ever since I entered this structure.
Shut up, Rain. If she wanted to kill me, then she would have certainly done it already.
I really hoped I could believe that, yet as if on cue, a new sound met my perked ears. "You have any idea why we're waiting here?" A buck's voice sounded to the right of the lab's exit. Some pony was waiting for us right around the corner, probably hoping to catch us by surprise. I brought my saddle blaster up and aimed towards the doorway and rotated my hoof, motioning for Cherry to take the other side. "Chief's orders. She's gone back to the boss with flash drive. That egghead can't get in from up here or something. But down here, that just got the chief spooked." Another buck responded in a slightly deeper tone. 2 bucks my visor confirmed as it gauged their combat readiness. Leaning back, I once again used my rifle's casting to peer around the corner. Both were wearing minigun battle saddles, black carapace barding upon which bore a strange icon. My mind paused for a moment at that, and I squinted at the icon. It was almost recognizable, if not far clearer than any faint memory I had. I knew that image of an 8-pointed star, and I recognized that strange glyphic pattern that covered the armor like some sort of freaky spider's web. My thought converged for a moment as they all sensed that I'd seen it before, yet I couldn't work out where I had seen those icons. "Must be something pretty terrifying to get her running back to the boss empty-hoofed," one of the bucks chuckled, his laughter being joined by the second. "Well, you never know. Skulking about in one of these fucking reliquaries. They're like death traps." Actually, you know what? You remember that last one?" the lighter-toned buck asked. I paused, holding my gun firm. I could spare these two a moment to enlighten me further. "You mean the Stalingrad one, or the one in Trottingham? Shit, man. After a while, they just all blur together, but, if I had the choice, I'd rather take a stroll through Bucking Canterlot than going back down into one of those Bucking tombs, especially if there's a chance we'll find another pony like, I don't know, Carnage or Locust," the deeper-voiced buck added firmly. I thought over this new information in incredulousness. Wait, there were more of these places?
What the fuck did you think, you idiot? Of course, there were bound to be more. The wasteland just liked to fuck with ponies like that.
But really, he'd really rather go through the Canterlot ruins over this? More confusingly, who the fuck was this Carnage or Locust, and why did he seem to refer to the names with trepidation? "By the sigil, I just hope that the Baron can keep them both on a leash," the second buck replied, almost whispering. "Relax. The Inquisitors have got it all under control. Carnage is just one pony I wouldn't fuck with, but the Grand Inquisitor? Are you really doubting him?" the first stallion responded. The former shook his head, and the pair seemed to shiver as if some pony was walking over their future graves. I heard enough of the cryptic chit-chat for one day. I'd hoped they'd unknowingly elaborate on what this place was, or what the fuck may have happened to me. Now, however, they were just rambling about some more shit I really had no idea about. My horn flared, levitating my plasma rifles around the door as I cautiously poked my head out from behind where I had taken cover again. Number of targets, 2, the spells in my visor declared, highlighting both of them in a red outline designated for enemies. I thought to use a grenade, yet after hearing them talk about big, scary boss ponies, I decided to try and save them. I looked back to Cherry, who was still hunkered down at the opposite side of the doorway.
"I'm gonna charge. You stay right behind me, and if any of them don't go down, you take them out,"
I instructed in whispers. Cherry closed her eyes tightly again, and she nodded. Every moment I had to ask her to do this was tearing me apart. Not only that, but it threatened to further corrupt her from the innocence she had before the death which she had dealt with in this bucking place. Nevertheless, one way or another, we were getting past these bucks.
"Okay, ready?"
I asked, poised to make a dash towards our unwary adversaries. She gave another stiff nod, nodding in my own acceptance. I bolted from the doorway, and 2 plasma rifles blasted a shower of glowing green bolts at our surprised opponents. These 2 stallions were far smaller than Slab, making the focused blasts far more effective. The farthest buck lost his rear legs to the shots before he could even turn a saddle-mounted weapon to bear in my direction. The armor of the second absorbed most of the energy, yet those which struck his coat seared it black. One bolt singed his eyes, sending him into a frantic buck as it melted. Spinning, he bit down on his battle saddle's firing mechanism, and the minigun whirled to life, shredding the wall to his left before turning to clean the white wall into a mangled mess of metal shrapnel and broken concrete. I ducked down before the hail of death, reloading my 2 rifles, after which I sent several more disintegration blasts his way. The beams mostly struck his head, each one searing more of his flesh, and his whole head splattered into a bloody paste upon the clean wall behind him. Cherry gave a stuttered cry as she stopped beside me, lowering her head and closing her eyes as the buck's body crumbled to the floor in a mess of singed gore, his miniguns rattling, coming to a halt.